chapter 10. And when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon because of the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bore spices, and with gold very much, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she spoke with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king which he told her not. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the food of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and his cupbearers, and his burnt offering which he offered in the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, It was a true report that I heard in mine own land of thine acts, and of your wisdom. However, I believed not the words until I came, and mine eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. You have wisdom and prosperity exceeding the fame which I heard. Happy are your men, happy are these your servants that stand continually before you, and that hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he you king, to do justice and righteousness. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices very great store, and precious stones. There come no more such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. And the navy also of Hiram, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of sandalwood and precious stones. And the king made of the sandalwood pillars of the house of the Lord, and for the king's house harps also and psalteries for the singers. There came no such sandalwood, nor was seen unto this day. And King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, beside that which came of the merchants, and the traffic of the traders, and of all the kings of the mingled people, and of all the governors of the country. And the king Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to one target. And he made 300 shekels of beaten gold. 3 pounds of gold went to one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, and overlaid it with the finest gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and the top of the throne was round behind, and there were arms on either side of the place of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the arms. And 12 lions stood there on the one side, and on the other side upon the steps. There was not the like made in any kingdom. And all King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was nothing to be accounted in the days of Solomon. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once every 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. And all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and raiment and armor and spices, horses and mules, a rate year by year. And Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen that he bestowed in the chariot cities with the king at Jerusalem. And the king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones, and cedars made he to be as the sycamore trees that are in the lowland for abundance. And the horses which Solomon had were brought out of Egypt, also out of Cavah, the king's merchants buying them of the men of Cavah at a price. And a chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Edom did they bring them out by their means. Okay, let's go back up to verse 1. Today the story is going to be about the Queen of Sheba is going to come to visit Solomon. Now, yesterday we had learned a little more about what it took to run the kingdom of Solomon here. It takes quite a bit of gold, quite a bit of silver. He has quite the consuming kingdom. And this is a great wealth, and all this wealth has to come from somewhere. And it is. And we'll get a little bit of understanding about where it's coming from along the way. Verse 1, and when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon because of the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. So now we have this queen, and we had heard about this earlier, this Baalath, this lord over men who is a feminine, and here she is, this woman. She's the queen of Sheba. And Sheba means 7 or an oath. And in this case it means the sevenfold oath. Heard of the fame of Solomon because of the Lord. Now, she's heard of Solomon because of what God has done. See, God has built all this up, and that's what God's showing you now. God can build. Oh, God's going to show us later. He can build much more than this. This here's just a little demonstration model for you that you can see what's going to happen later on. And verse 2, she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bore spices and gold very much, precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she spoke with him all that was in her heart. So now the Queen of Sheba, she's come to Jerusalem, this place of peaceful teachings, and she's got with her a great train. Of course, what this is a caravan or a great accompaniment. She has a lot of people with her, and they're bringing a lot of things with them. And these camels, they're bearing spices. And these spices are seasonings that would season the cooking, and also there would be some incense in this. And gold, that which belongs to God, very much. And these precious stones, these precious stones means these understandings. And when she was come to Solomon, she spoke to him everything that was in her heart. 3, and Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king which he told her not, because God has given Solomon great understanding. God has prospered Solomon in his knowledge. And the Queen of Sheba has come with every question she could muster up, all the great questions of the wise men. And Solomon's told her everything she wanted to know. Verse 4, and when the Queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon and the house that he had built, so now Solomon's brought her, and he's showing her everything in the kingdom, and he's telling her all this. And the food, verse 5, of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and his cupbearers, and his burnt offering, which he offered in the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. So now he's took her and he showed her everything. He's even took her to the temple and showed her how they offer burnt offerings on the altar. And I'm still hoping Solomon ain't offering these up himself, but I'm starting to get a feeling that he is, and this is going to be a mistake. God's not going to take kindly to this, the fact that he's not obeying the law. And another thing is he would not be allowed to take her into the temple where they offer the burnt offerings, because she would be considered uncircumcised. 6, and she said to the king, it was a true report that I heard in mine own land of thine acts and your wisdom. So now she's going to tell Solomon, I've heard of you, where I come from. I've heard of your great deeds and your great understanding. 7, however, I believed not the words until I came, and mine eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. You have wisdom and prosperity, exceeding the fame of which I've heard. So now this Queen of Sheba is telling Solomon, I've heard of you, but you're far richer than anybody's ever told me. You're exceeding everything I've ever heard. 8. Happy are your men, happy are these your servants, and that stand continually before you, and that hear your wisdom. So this Queen of Sheba, what she sees is only what's on top. She doesn't really see what's down below the surface. See, when these of royalty and nobility come, they walk around the castle and they see all the great things of the kingdom and all these great thrones. But let us now go down to where the people are exacted on and oppressed and see what we see. See, it's a whole different kingdom there. 9. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you to sit you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he you king to do justice and righteousness. And we're going to find out, see, God had another purpose in mind when he set a king over Israel. See, you didn't want God to be your king. You wanted to have a man king, and you got one. See, but God's used. Now, this king's for judgment. This king's for no other purpose. 10. 10's the law. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices very great store, and precious stones. And there came no more such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. So the queen has presented Solomon with all these great gifts that the train brought with them, this caravan. And these 120 talents of gold, these 100 is the judgment now of redemption, goes around because it's of God. It belongs to God. This circle of redemption is the judgment of God. 11. And the navy also of Hiram that brought gold from Ophir, brought it from Ophir great plenty of sandalwood and precious stones. And we're going to find out these navies, a little more about these navies and these ships that Solomon's got out, and they're going all through the oceans, across the seas, across to other lands now, and bringing this gold and bringing all these treasures to Solomon. And once again, this Ophir is this ring of pure gold. Sandalwood, these come from a certain tree, and sandalwood was used for many things. Sandalwood was used in many ancient and old religion and ceremonies. Sandalwood was a form of incense that was used. Sandalwood can be used in instruments because it adds a certain bass sound to the instrument. There was many uses for sandalwood, but the most of it was be for the incense and the fact that it's a scented wood. 12. And the king made of the sandalwood pillars for the house of the Lord, and for the king's house harps also, and psalteries for the singers. There came no such sandalwood, nor was seen unto this day. And sandalwood, even at that time, was a very precious thing. Today it is an extremely precious thing in the market. There's a black market for it, as well as a government-controlled market for sandalwood. But we're going to see that he's erected these pillars. Now, God commanded in Deuteronomy not to erect pillars. He don't like pillars. These pillars shade the understanding of God. They get in the way, and they're just like a cedar tree to God. They represent this thing that shades the light. And you get over in the shadow of the pillar, and it blocks the light, and we can't see nothing but the pillar. 13. And King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his own royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own land, she and her servants. So the little visit's over from the queen of Sheba, this queen of the folded oath, and she's gone back to her land. Her and Solomon's traded their wealths off. And, one thing is, we might add, and this is for all those who are the leaders out there who claim to be the leaders, your wealth comes at the cost of many of your constituents. 14. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. So now this weight of gold, this is the weight which Solomon would get in 1 year. Now begin to understand. This 666 talents of gold. 666. This 600 is the work of judgment. These 3 score is the complete redemption. Is complete redemption now. And this 6 talents is this work of man that goes around because it belongs to God. So now God's working His judgment and His complete redemption now through this work that goes around. See, this was given by God. And it is given to you to see this great ring, this circle of wheel. And we're going to find more about this golden wheel this later on. But the prophet's going to tell us about this. The prophet's seen this same thing. 15. Now beside that which came of the merchants, and the traffic of the traders, and of all the kings of the mingled, and of the governors of the country. The what? Besides that which came of the merchants, this gold, we see now Solomon's taxing the merchants and the traffic of the traders. This is a similar tax that they have in every country today. These people that come in and trade, see, they put trade taxes on these people, as Solomon did too. And of all the kings, mingled people, and the governors of the country. Now, so we find out that Solomon has got levies now. We learned this earlier. He's got these taxes he's put on these other people. And these kings of all these other countries have to pay Solomon tribute. And he's taxing everybody. He's taxing all the merchants. He's taxing the traders. He's taxing the people of the mingled people. He's taxing all the kings and the governors. He's taxing everybody. That's how he gets all his great wealth. 16. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold, and 600 shekels of gold went into one target. Now I know this target leads you to believe it's a shield, but it's not a shield. This target is like a spear, except for the fact it's got a barb on the end, like a fish hook, so once it goes in, it don't come back out too easy. You have to push it all the way through. 200. Now witness this judgment. Made of beaten gold, that which was put to the hand of man and hammered out, that which belonged to God. 600 shekels. Now this is the work of man. 6 days you do your labor. For judgment is weighed out, and it's of God. And this is what these targets are. These golden spears that are used to run in a pierce. And he made 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 pounds of gold went into one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Now, this house in the forest of Lebanon, see, was supposed to represent, and this house represents this place of Lebanon, that which was made white for a witness. It has to do with these stones of the law, which were plastered so that it could be made plain and simple. 300 shekels, this is the complete judgment. These shields represent a covenant. They represent covenant. Now, this is the complete judgment of this covenant. This covenant of the beaten gold, that which men have hammered out, that which men made of that which belonged to God. These 3 pounds of gold, a pound is a measurement. Pound means measurement. It's a measurement that is like set out, a measurement that's set out already given. And these 3 pounds is these 3 measurements that belong to God. See, this complete measurement belongs to God. What? This judgment that he's put on man. See, this is the judgment. And this is what this one shield represents. Now we know that he's made three. That's complete judgment, 300 of them. But they're all one shield to God. 18. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with the finest of gold. So now we see the king's going to make him a great throne of ivory. And ivory comes from the tusks of elephants, as well as other places, being of a different form though. And to make a throne of this would require the tusks of many elephants. And he's overlaid them with the finest of gold now for his own throne. 19. There were 6 steps to the throne. And to the top of the throne was round behind, and there was arms on either side of the place of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the arms. Now these two lions represent authority, power, to be the king. Now, God wants you to witness this. These 6 steps that are going up, these 6 steps represent each one. A step is an asher, a step of progressiveness. And you've probably heard me say this before. This is what asher means, to step forward and upward at the same time. And these 6 steps are the labors of man going up. Of course, Solomon's throne sits on the most upper step, the top, which would be the 7th step. 20. And 12 lions stood there on the one side, and upon the 6 steps, there was not the like made in any kingdom. So we see this great throne now has these 6 steps going up, and on each step, one on each side, is a lion. 12 lions in all. 12, understanding now. 12 means understanding. To witness the law, see, 10 and 2. Witness the law and have understanding of this authority. 21. And all of the king Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. There was nothing accounted in the days of Solomon. So Solomon's wealth is exceeding. He drinks from gold cups. He eats off gold plates. He uses gold utensils. Everything gold. Silver is nothing in the house of Solomon. 22. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once every 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks and all these manners of extravagant gifts. And Tarshish is this region of the yellow stone, this stone that appears to be gold, but it's not. And they bring gold, they bring that which belongs to God, and this silver. Silver is this which has got to pass through the fire, and it's used. It's the dross from gold. And ivories, these tusks, these animals. So we see by these gifts they've come from somewhere along the tropics. 23. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. And well, that's what we're going to find out. See, that's what God wants you to understand. God is building this up. God's making Solomon. He's increased Solomon with every great thing. He's built him up. He's going to make Solomon's kingdom wealthier, richer, more abundant, flowing with everything, knowledge and wisdom. 24. And all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And we'll find now, see, that all the earth is coming to Solomon. They hear this great wisdom which God has put in his heart. See, let me tell you something about God. God has a way to make you think you understand something, and he can snap his fingers, and all of a sudden, everything you thought you understood is gone. It's like he changed the whole world just to make you stupid. And he has a very special way of doing that. And we're going to find now in the end that when they begin to awaken and they find out that they're asleep and all their understanding is made ignorance. 25, and they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, raiment and armor and spices and horses and mules, a rate year by year, understanding after understanding. Understanding after understanding comes from this. What do we see? Everybody that comes to see Solomon, now they bring treasures, these vessels of silver and vessels of gold, raiment, that which covers, armor, that which protects, these spices, the season, horses. Horses are a show of power and strength when a horse rider is far above those on their feet and faster and fleeter. He's made stronger and more powerful. And these mules, we've talked about the mules before, these mules represent these kingdoms that are unfertile. They will not reproduce. Why? Because they come from these two that are not of the same species. 26, and Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen that he bestowed in the chariot cities and with the king of Jerusalem, with the king at Jerusalem, this place of the peaceful teachings where the king would reside. And these chariots for his army, these vehicles of war, these seats of the rider, and these 12,000. Now understand this fulfillment. Understand God's fulfillment. These 400 to God's work of judgment. He wants you to understand the fulfillment of all these things. Because God does fulfill. Now, God does fulfill his word. 27. And the king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones, as cedar trees he made to be as sycamore trees that are in the lowland for abundance. And we'll see here this silver he made as stones. It was accounted nothing, like stones, like rocks that lay on the ground, was silver for the riches and the wealth of this place that God had built up. And these cedar trees, once again now represent that which shade. And we're going to use these over and over and over and over. God's going to use these symbologies over and over and over so that we can understand them. These cedar trees were like nothing there. They was everywhere, so everything shaded. 28, and the horses which Solomon had were brought out of Egypt, also out of Kavah. The king's merchants buying them of men of Kavah at a price. And Kavah means this place of hope, this place of expectance. And there he buys these horses at a price, these things of strength. And they're coming out of Egypt, this place of enclosures. This is the land of traps. God's going to have another great deliverance in the end. And it's going to be very similar to the one where he brought all of Israel up out of the land of snares, this land of traps, this land of enclosures. See, it's all the same thing. Because no longer will he be called the God that delivered you out of Egypt, but the God that delivered you out of all the nations of the earth. There's deliverance for everybody. 29, and a chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Edom did they bring them out by their means. So we see Solomon's exacting on now on these Hittites, these descendants of Terah, and Aram, these ones who were enlightened, these exactions, and they're having to go buy these horses and stuff for Solomon. And this chariot, this rider's seat that was sold for 600, this is the work of man and the judgment that's weighed out. And they're getting them out of Egypt, out of this land of enclosures. This is where they're coming from, and this is what they're selling for. It's what it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you judgment. And for 150, judgment. Why? Judgment is grace. Judgment is the grace of the law. That's what grace is. Grace is the judgment of God. Grace, and it comes through the law. God judges through the law. God's already judged. He's already judged you. God wants to change your heart. God wants you to turn to Him. Follow His law. Follow His law. And He wants to go before you and drive all the misery out of your life. All right. Let's move on to chapter 11.